All right, coming live, Brooklyn, New York City. I have my friend Chris Blom on the podcast. Now, Chris is a real estate broker, a commercial real estate broker on the West Coast as opposed to New York City. However, we connected via YouTube when I was trying to do my due diligence on being a data-driven broker, and his YouTube channel pretty much broke down what net absorption is, which is the change in occupancy over time in an area. Now, Chris, how are you doing?
Doing well. Thanks, James. Appreciate you
Yeah,
having me on. I'm looking forward to doing podcast.
yeah, anytime. So where exactly on the West Coast are you?
So I right now am in Burlingame. That's where our office is, which is about 30 miles outside of San Francisco. And my market is San Mateo County.
Okay, absolutely. Now let's talk about being a data-driven broker. I mean, from either mastering the area that you are a broker in to, data like net absorption and, the changes in different companies that we have access to nowadays. Just talk about that a little bit because you personally taught me a lot.
Absolutely. I think at the end of the day, brokerage has been, and always will be a people-oriented business, but understanding the data is very important. And I think it's really our job as being intermediaries for our clients, understanding the market and being able to fully educate them and be their spokesperson, maybe in areas that they don't understand. And for me, it's about building up, being another young broker like yourself, it's about building up a brand and building up uh, building up that knowledge and being trusted by the clients.
Yeah, building a voice that's trustworthy for your clients. Now, talk about what kind of data that we have access to that they might not have before the internet. When we were speaking before, you were talking about maybe a board member change in a company and things like that. Tell me what kind of data that you use to get the upper hand on other brokers you're in competition with in your area.
Absolutely. We spoke about it before, but I think using databases like CrunchBase to track when different companies are receiving funding, or simply setting up Google keyword searches for companies that may have executive changes. Those are opportunities where you can get into a company where you may not otherwise be recepted by the company. So, those are
Yeah.
key pieces of data that I try to track and have a strong understanding on, from a client perspective, from a market perspective, in terms of my canvassing, my research, and cold calling.
Absolutely. Now, CrunchBase. So say you have, so that'll, I've never heard of it prior to this, but I can understand the gist. So basically, if you're an office broker, correct?
That's correct. Office and R&D.
Okay, office and R&D. So you see a company is now receiving, let's say, for example, 30 million in funding, and they have a new CEO. Now, will you reach out to them and say, "Hi, I have office space available. It looks like your company. This wouldn't be a startup, but especially a startup. That they're changing offices, especially in New York, like crazy due to the change in the amount of employees that they have." So is that basically how you would use that?
Exactly. That's exactly the case. And, I think going back to brokerage being a relationship business, a lot of times companies and the executives of companies will have strong relationships with brokers, people that they trust. And so for someone young getting into the industry, it's important to find companies that are either young. So I do a lot of work with startups, or companies that are going through big changes that may lead to an opportunity point. Either they just raised a fundraising round or they've had an executive change. And so there is a reason for them to perhaps go out and get a new voice and find someone that they trust in the area that can help them with their relocation, help them with their long-term facility planning. For me, it's about, being a consultant for them and not just being a transactional broker. So that might sound a little counterintuitive because it is kind of seizing upon moments when they're looking for space, but it's about building this trust and building this conversation. So a lot of times you'll reach out and they just raise funding, but their office lease is still good for another 2 years. So it's about, creating that dialogue, keeping them up to date with what market pricing is, where it's going and what's available, so that when the time is right for them to move, you've kind of already built up that relationship, built up that trust, and they want to reach out to you and use you as a broker.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, and I that's why I respect you as a broker. I'm looking to be a data-driven broker myself. As many mistakes as I do make, because I am human. However, I look to just be the best broker I can possibly be, and I think that that starts with relationships. Um, so yeah, that's great. Now, tell me that as a data-driven and relationship-based broker, how are you as an office broker fighting back on companies like WeWork? I don't know if they're over in California, but especially if you're working with startups, um, in New York, it's standard to sign a 10-year lease, and with WeWork, they're doing the 1-year leasing and things like that to startups who know that they're going to have a change in the amount of employees they have. So how are you fighting back on that, and how are you guys
Sure.
essentially combating that as
No, I
office
mean
brokers
that's a
in
great
California?
question. WeWork definitely is in our market and is entering uh, and growing their presence here. I think it goes again towards my platform of trying to be a consultant for my clients and be the best broker I can be in terms of thinking of their long-term interests. So, if co-working is the best option for them and it's going to be a smaller commission up front, I'm okay with that. I think that the WeWork platform is a great platform, and other co-working platforms are great for young companies that need flexibility, that need, you know, um, more the ability to scale and grow and even to go into different markets. And I think that's what the WeWork platform serves very well. I think there does reach a point where, you know, the cost for WeWork, perhaps it makes a little more sense for companies to go out and find their own space, or perhaps they want to create their own identity. So I think there's always going to be a place for brokers, even if co-working continues to grow, which I think it will, because I think it does solve an important problem. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I mean, WeWork even is starting their own brokerage company, at least here in the West Coast, and I imagine back in the East Coast as well, where they're hiring brokers to serve those young companies and help them grow even outside of the WeWork branded facility. So it'll certainly be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, wow, that's very interesting, and toast to you for fighting back. I like that, and yeah, I mean, even Compass started, which is one of the biggest brokerages, especially around here, started as a company that was actually gonna just try to eliminate the broker, and they realized in time that you need to enable the broker,
That's
and that's the
I think that's
platform that
exactly
they've
right.
taken,
And
and
I was listening to that episode a few days ago. Certainly an interesting episode, and I think that's what will be the case moving forward. I mean, I think that there certainly is a place for technology and for data in brokerage, and I think it'll play more and more of a role. And I think it is, you know, unfortunate perhaps that certain older brokers don't want to leverage the changes and don't want to accept the new reality. But at the same time, I think there's always going to be a place for the human element, right? And even when the data is available, it takes perhaps a broker to walk the client through the steps and make sure that they're aware of any nuances, right? I think I remember hearing it in that episode, but the
that's ex- that's exactly what you heard is Niall Lundgren talking about navigating the nuances
exactly. I
of the
mean, that's
market.
exactly right. And just because, I mean, you see it, and this is on the residential side, but Zillow and Redfin getting into, the residential brokerage space and trying to eliminate the need for residential brokers. But I think that at the end of the day, there can be such a big difference between, two houses on the same street or two office buildings in the same market, and understanding, what are the differences between those? What are the priorities of the ownership groups? I mean,
Yeah,
that's a really important part of what I think that I offer to my clients, is helping them really understand what are the priorities of the ownership group that you're negotiating with, because they can be very different, and that can dictate ultimately where the deal is going to land. So it's not just, hey, what is the asking rate and what does the space look like, because I think those are items that can be facilitated by CoStar, LoopNet, right? The online services. I think we're going to see that it's much easier for clients to have an understanding of what's available and what pricing is. But what are the nuances between the different spaces? What do the ownership groups, what are they trying to achieve? Are they trying to do long-term cash flow, or do they want to turn around and flip the building in a few years? So they're just trying to push the rate and from that perspective to drive up the value of the building, that can make a big difference. So understanding not just asking rate, not just what the space looks like, but where did the comps land? What is the priorities of all the parties that are involved? And that's really what it means to be a broker and be there for your client.
Chris, I think that you are well on your way to being an excellent broker. And I think that was a great point about what ownership is looking to do with buildings, especially given how hot multifamily is right now, even if it's got retail on the bottom or office space in it. I think that investing in real estate has just become very mainstream, and exactly a lot of acquisition holders and acquisition LLCs and big powerhouse landlords that have different prerogatives when it comes to what they're looking to do with their building. So, all right, Chris, listen, it's been great. I really appreciate your time. Anything else you'd like to plug? I just want to say for the listening audience that if you are a real estate broker, a commercial real estate broker, or a commercial real estate professional, that Chris's YouTube channel is excellent. So, Chris, why don't you go ahead and plug that before I let you go?
You can find me at ChristopherBlum.com. All my YouTube videos are linked there. Appreciate the shout out, and really love what you're doing, James, with the podcast, and appreciate the ambition that you're showing there.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it comes with a little bit of ambition and a little bit of data and a little, and if you have good relationships with that, I mean, you're unstoppable. So, all right, Chris, I appreciate your time. It's been great. And thanks for coming on the Ambition Audio Show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
No problem. All right. Talk soon, Chris.